the darkness, Mother, bathe me in thy light. Bathe me in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, bathe me in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, bathe me in thy light. 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 Hello, friends. My name is Nayaswami Hriman, and this is our Monday through Friday noon broadcast of the unpublished writings of Paramhansa Yogananda. Speaking to you from the Camano Hermitage on Camano Island in western Washington in the good old US of A. Today I've chosen several things from Yogananda's unpublished writings, thinking ahead to Thanksgiving as our different Ananda communities are making plans to share a meal and so on. I thought to share with you that Yoganandaji, who was considered to be quite a creative, inventive recipe maker for vegetarian dishes in his time, at a time when vegetarianism was pretty kooky, 1920s and 30s, he has this recipe for nut cutlets. Now, my wife Padma makes a dish called nutty cheese cutlets from one of the Ananda cookbooks, but back here in August of 1933, Yogananda has a recipe where you finely chop walnuts, and then you have a little bit of butter and a little tiny bit of flour, and add salt and paprika, and add some milk and a little bit of onion juice. My heavens, what is onion juice? And some a bunch of breadcrumbs. Add the walnuts, and so some of that's cooked a little bit and then cooled, and then in his case, in his time, deep fried to make little cutlets. I suppose you could bake it too, right? So anyway, just to let you know that that he was ahead of his time. That's no surprise to most of you. The selection that came with that recipe is called Creating Happiness, and it's the first sentence that caught my attention. There are other aspects of it I'll share, but it's this sentence: persons of strong character are usually the happiest. Now I want to repeat that. Persons of strong character are usually the happiest. Now, I find that in the field of yoga, meditation, and New Age thinking, and this sort of thing, that it can attract a certain percentage of people who are not strong characters, a little bit of passive, maybe weak. At least they're perceived as such, but people who are maybe on the fringes of society to some degree are, not able to integrate into the larger mainstream, and that can be a sign of free thinking, a sign of very positive, even saintly qualities, but it can also be the opposite. And so my message today is that it takes a strong character to find happiness, and happiness in turn is not a thing. It doesn't come from things. The kind of happiness, of course, I would refer to, given who I am, and what we're broadcasting here would be soul happiness. And Yogananda talked a great deal about willpower. And I've studied my share of saints of East and West, and I was thinking, and when I read this first sentence, persons of strong character are usually the happiest, I was beginning to ruminate on whether or not it's possible that virtually every type of strong personality can become saintly. we have this image of the meek and mild Jesus, or St. Francis tiptoeing through the tulips, and this kind of milk toasty kind of thing. It's a common image. Maybe it's just in the West, I don't know, but this image that saints are a little bit daft, incompetent, spacey, whatever, that kind of hippie talk. I don't think that's really true. I suppose you could be that way and be a saint, because a saint transcends all human personalities. But I think realistically speaking, I think those who are passive and a little bit wimpy maybe, are of the whatever variety, aren't going to really achieve it. Now, you can be accepting, you can be sweet and humble, but if there isn't some form of a strong streak of intensity in some aspect of your personality, maybe it's simply in your sadhana, in your meditation, but I guess I just want to emphasize that the strength of personality that is needed to achieve sanctity, to achieve self-realization, to achieve transcendence of ego, probably means that the effort, and Patanjali talks about the intensity required in his Yoga Sutras to achieve samadhi. I think the intensity of any sort in this way, internalized towards transcendence, internalized towards stillness, internalized towards self-realization, is bound to create certain, let's call it distortions in the outer appearance and manifestation of the personality. We don't talk about this very much. In fact, we don't talk about it at all. But I think it's valuable to acknowledge that being sweet and meek and mild and, patting children on the head, kissing babies, and helping elderly personages across the street is, it only goes so far. I think of Jesus Christ, and I don't know why anybody called him meek and mild, for heaven's sakes. Just read the New Testament. He was battling with those rascals, the Pharisees, and calling them all sorts of intense names. I object to this sweet and mild depiction or persona among people. Be a good person for sure, but, you got to have some, I won't use the vernacular, you got to have some Shakti, I'll use that word instead, to find God. And so I don't mean by that we should be ruthless or run over people's feelings or that kind of thing, but for heaven's sakes, you're never going to accomplish anything without willpower. And that willpower, it's sort of like, I visualize that as the prow of a fast-moving boat or ship. It's going to cause waves, okay? If you can't cause some waves in your life, I don't mean on purpose, but if the intensity of your spiritual efforts don't have some impact on the world around you. For starters, we know that very often that the person in a family who turns his back on family pursuits and worldly self-definitions to seek God, invariably, immediately, generates a certain amount of criticism, we'll just say, from the family. Who is my family, Jesus Christ said, but those who love God. And so the first line of response to one who seeks a spiritual life as opposed to embraces only a worldly life is among family members. The next level tends to be, friends, our old drinking buddies, so to speak, our old gossipy friends and that kind of thing. Those are the ones who they'd rather you become a drunk or an addict of some sort, then they could at least pity you, but to become a devotee is to make them look bad. So, let's have some Shakti in our lives, okay? I've said this before, but, our world desperately needs people to stand up and be counted. And meditators tend to be kind of, shy and that sort of thing by nature, but dadgummit, we need to... I'm not a big joiner. In fact, I didn't really care for the whole idea of communities in the beginning of my Ananda experience, but I've grown to see the power of joining with others because we need support. Environment, Yogananda said, is stronger than willpower. So, and at this point in history, the power of satsang, of communities, of the Sangha or fellowship, we need people who are internally driven or inspired by meditation. Meditators need to be counted. Meditators need to be seen. The fight between left and right, even between peaceniks, it doesn't work that way. Fighting doesn't really accomplish anything on the outer level. But we need people to say, I am a meditator. I meditate. Won't you give it a try? I'm not talking really proselytizing in the Christian sense of the term, but I am talking about being standing up and being counted, being seen, sharing with others, one's love for God. I remember, what was that wonderful saintly man? I'm terrible with names at this point in my life, but he had Frank Laubach. He was a Protestant minister, very saintly man who practiced the presence of God, but he went on a campaign at one point in his life, a campaign among ministers to get them to talk about God in their sermons. Can you imagine? They talk about all sorts of things, homelessness and prostitution and or whatever you call that, trafficking and all these other things. But what about God? God is the source of life. God is the solution to life's problems. And so we need people to stand up for attunement, divine attunement, sitting in the silence to receive the grace and the power, the vitality and the inspiration to live God-centered lives in whatever way our Dharma directs us. It can be on the great stage of life in public service, or it can be quietly in our homes and with our children. But for heaven's sakes, be a strong character. Don't be a wimp. That's the message. Now, he goes on in this article to talk about happiness and how to be happy under all circumstances. You all know that, so I'm not going to talk about that. But he said some interesting things. He said, try to be happy under all circumstances. Okay, you know that already. But do not try to make happiness conditional to certain desired changes. Now, here's the part. Except in rare cases. He says, don't be bound by set rules, as there are exceptions to every rule. And this is my message to you today, that we want to be exceptional people. We should stand out in the right way, all right? We need to stop hiding our spirituality in ways that are fit to us. But also, there are exceptions to every rule. In other words, we love this saying by one of Yogananda's great saints, saintly disciples, Gyanamata, don't change any circumstance, but change me. But, she was already a saint, damn it. Sometimes we just need to, I think of a wonderful man who just did not have the courage to stand up to his wife. His wife, I think she was very conservative in her political views and maybe had a bunch of associates and family members. I had a feeling that it was her wealth that he was living on. I think he was sort of a kept man. And he just just didn't have the nerve to declare his meditation and to declare his participation in Ananda Church. And I've seen that too often. I mean, what are you, a wimp? Stand up, for heaven's sakes. If you're in what I call a mixed marriage where you're the meditator and your spouse is not, don't hide that. I mean, don't cause trouble. But Jesus said, I came not to bring peace. I came to bring a sword. My message to you is stand up for your spiritual path. Stand up for a God-centered life. You know, don't be meek and mild. Your commitment to self-realization is going to cause waves, mostly in you, but also around you. That prow of the ship of your concentration and your willpower is going to impact the world, and it's supposed to. Okay? So let's be strong. I love that affirmation that Swami gives us in his book, Affirmations for Self-Healing. It's one of my favorite. I am strong in myself. I am complete in myself. Forget the rest of it suddenly. And I created my own little song. I am strong in myself. I am free. Complete in myself. I seek thee. In pleasure or pain, come loss or come gain, be praised or be blamed, I remain just the same. For nothing and no one is mine. For in pleasure or pain, forget it. I seek God alone, only thee. In thy love and thy joy I am free. I seek God alone, only thee. In thy love and thy joy I am free. I am strong in myself. I am free. Okay.